Fundraising around the world. Hi, I'm Bill Stanczykiewicz. This is the first day from the Fundraising School, and I'm joined today by Mohammed Abdel-Kader. He's the founder and principal of the Radial Global Advisory, a social impact consulting firm that works here in the United States and internationally. Mohammed, thank you for being with us on the Fundraising Schools podcast.
Thanks for having me, Bill. Excited to be with everyone today.
Before we talk about advice that you have for fundraising from the United States into other countries around the world, help our audience understand your background, because while you're based in the U.S., you do quite a bit of work in other countries.
Yeah, thanks. I've started off my career mostly in higher ed with a focus, spent a lot of time doing fundraising as a development officer for a couple of institutions, first at George Mason, and then later at Georgetown University at the School of Foreign Service for a number of years. And in both contexts, both institutions, I was doing a bit of international strategy as well. In particular, at Georgetown, I was there when the financial markets crashed in 2008, 2009. And, I sort of made a pitch to our leadership and I said, look, we've got quite a bit of alumni overseas who I think could really benefit from getting to know the institution better. If you're cool with it, I'd like to take my travel budget and begin to cultivate some relationships overseas. And I did that with a primary focus on the Middle East, in particular the Gulf, to be a little more specific. Mm-hmm. And I like to think it was a success for the institution. I spent a number of years in the Obama administration overseeing the Title VI and Fulbright-Hays programs at the U.S. Department of Education, which was largely a grant-making unit that was supporting language learning and area studies at American institutions. It was a real just great opportunity. Spent a few years after that overseeing a program at the Aspen Institute that was connecting classrooms in the United States with classrooms overseas. And now I'm in the middle of an Eisenhower Fellowship and really trying to build up this advisory practice that I have, where we're working with organizations to help them make better strategic decisions, whether it's on their operations, their fundraising, board management, a number of different things that I work with a number of clients on. So it's been a lot of fun. It's been a good experience to just help folks think a little more about some of the challenges that they're facing. So, and that brought me to you. So it's good to connect with you, Bill.
What a unique and remarkable background. And it's great to connect with you as well, Mohammed. Thanks. And as you've traveled the world now, both raising money, as you talked about, and also, connecting, United States activities with activities in other countries. What advice do you have for fundraisers who are based in the United States, but also have donors or prospective donors in other countries around the world?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, look, fundraising internationally is both exciting, but can also be intimidating. I would say three primary things are important to keep in mind. The first is, in fundraising, there's a development cycle. When you're working with individual donors, you're getting to know folks, you're identifying and qualifying them, you're cultivating them, you're eventually soliciting, and then you're stewarding, right? That's a simplification of the cycle. But what I would say is don't deviate from that cycle. You still have fundamentals in fundraising, and they apply all over the world with folks from all over the world. It's an important process, and every step builds on the previous one. What I would say is, though, when you're fundraising internationally, you simply add a cultural lens to it. And what do I mean by that? So you've got to be conscious of things like local holidays, local norms, local laws, right? You're really just adding that lens in front of you. You got to think about things like family dynamics, right? So could the matriarch of the family need to be involved in the decision making? Is it a patriarchal family where the grandfather needs to be involved in the ask? Things like that are important to keep in mind for your success. Also be conscious of certain times of the year when people are more generous. So for instance, in Muslim communities, oftentimes giving happens during the month of Ramadan. So things like that, where it's important to get a sense of the local culture, some of the local customs where you're working. And I also say that there's a caveat to that, because not every family, not every prospect fully adheres to everything. So it's just a matter of being conscious of it. That's really the first thing that I would say is important when you're heading overseas. The second thing that I would say is approach fundraising as a win-win relationship, as a partnership. Part of that is committing to the region where you're going to be fundraising in. And I say that because quite often to the detriment of a lot of institutions in the United States, we've treated other parts of the world as an ATM. That not only breeds resentment, but it's very clear of a short-term mindset, of a transactional mindset. And that doesn't serve the institution, doesn't serve the donor. You really want to think long-term. You want to think about their best interest. And, things like assigning a staff member to a particular region or a city so that there's a steady presence. It demonstrates a commitment. On another level, think about your programs in that city. Beyond fundraising, is there an academic program in that, in that town serving the local community? Some institutions have facilities around the world in other parts of the world as they think about their campus internationalization and their presence around the world. So that's another thing to consider. Make that commitment and think about how you can help that local community as if it were your own. We're in an age where borders have vanished, borders have been blurred, and we're very much connected. So as many of our institutions think of themselves as global universities, global colleges, global institutions, also keep in mind that local community should be treated like your own. The final thing that I would say is to the extent you can, localize your price points and your products, right? So in a campaign context, there's often the development of products and price points. So a scholarship costs this much, a faculty chair corresponds to this particular price point. Say you're a university and you're in the middle of a capital campaign. Why would a prospective donor in a country care about, for instance, a scholarship to help a student in your own community when they have needs as well? One of the things that helped, that certainly I think helped me when I was at Georgetown, is we localized a lot of price points and products, and what that really looked like was to say, okay, if I am going to be in Jordan today, or I'm going to be in Kuwait or the UAE meeting with prospective donors, well, there's students there who may want to come to Georgetown as well, or to George Mason or wherever institution I'm fundraising for. Think about a scholarship that supports students from that community to come to your institution. You localize it. There's local impact. I think especially in light of the last financial crisis, 2008, 2009, a lot of philanthropists started thinking about local impact. We've now been through there have been several armed conflicts around the world, refugee crises, a pandemic. A lot of folks are more conscious of local impact, especially those with significant philanthropic needs, and they're going to want to better their local communities. That's one of the main drivers of philanthropy. So to the extent you can find that win-win, back to the previous point, localize your products and price points to say, here's a scholarship that'll help a kid from your community come to our institution. The other thing to think about is your academic programs that may benefit that local community. Do you have a center, a social work center that's doing work not just in your home community, but in communities around the world? Do you have a finance program or an international relations program that's studying a particular part of the world? So think about those types of linkages, and again, develop pathways for local impact. I would say those are really kind of the three main things to keep in mind for success when you're fundraising internationally.
Mohammed, that's great advice for our fundraisers. Stick to your continued fundraising planning in the cultural context of the donor and the prospective donor. Make sure it's win-win, not a transaction. And one way to do that is to make sure that the opportunities for financial support are localized for that particular donor. And Mohammed, I want to ask you, and we teach that at the fundraising school in terms of a tool we call the values exchange, that the nonprofit benefits from the financial gift, but also in many other ways. And the donor benefits in many ways from making the gift, including their personal motivations and their philanthropic values that they're able to express. As we do that, here in the United States, there's lots of ways that we can research. Certainly, maybe somebody on our board and our organization knows the donor. We obviously can look on LinkedIn and online and our own donor database for information. But here's what I'm getting at in the international context. We also teach that the best way to find out about the donor is to meet with the donor and to continually meet with the donor. Well, if the donor lives on the other side of the planet, that could be a little bit harder. So how do I gain information about the donor, especially in those last two categories of win-win and a localized opportunity for funding, when it's harder to meet with the donor face-to-face?
Yeah, well, look, first and foremost, to your earlier point, Bill, to the extent you can hop on a plane and go meet with folks, you're going to learn more in a single meeting than you will through a lot of prospect research. So again, I am a favor of face-to-face meetings, but we are in an age where technology allows us to continue to develop connections. So whether that's through the power of Zoom meetings or other platforms, that's important. You can continue to engage folks that way. Continue to engage donors through your portfolio of engagement opportunities. We're doing a lot more programming virtually these days, and there's an opportunity to intellectually engage donors as well, so that they're benefiting from the star power and the really intellectual richness of a lot of our institutions. So that really provides an opportunity to add value to that relationship, continue to utilize what's happening across the institution. Continue to think about other creative ways to engage. Do you have a mentorship program for students where they could potentially engage with that prospective donor, connect with them, learn with them? There's a number of ways to again, turn this into a win-win situation beyond just the transaction of writing a check. And I think that pays dividends in the long term for everyone involved.
And we certainly can relate to that here at the fundraising school. Pre-pandemic, if we were going to train internationally, we needed to get on an airplane. Yeah. Now, sometimes we do, and sometimes we teach by Zoom. Sometimes people still come here. Sometimes they join us by Zoom. And so it's just still finding that mix as technology has become more widespread as a byproduct of the COVID-19 pandemic. Yeah. Mohammed, I want to ask you about timing. We're putting our fundraising plan together. We have that approved internally. We have board approval. Does fundraising internationally take longer because of the distance, and it takes me longer to develop and cultivate a relationship before making the ask? Is it about the same? Perhaps it's even faster because people understand the geographic distance and maybe aren't as interested in as many meetings. Is there a timing difference when we fundraise internationally?
I don't think there is. I think I found that, similar to fundraising here in the United States, you may go see a prospect and they're ready to engage with the institution, and they're ready to meet your faculty and ready to meet the deans and ready to cut a check, and they're excited. They're ready to host something in their home. Other times you're building trust. Folks will say, "Hey, where have you been? We haven't heard from you in a while." Or, "Oh, I made that gift back in 1995 and no one said thank you." And they're upset, and you've got to do some repair of the relationship. And that's no different than here in the United States. So I would say there isn't necessarily a rule, but to your earlier point, the engagement piece may take a while, right? If you're taking a principal overseas, a dean or a president, it might be tougher to plan those types of visits. So you have to get creative and think about perhaps your volunteers. Is there a senior volunteer who lives in Hong Kong that you could send to go meet with a prospective donor in the meantime? In that time between you getting back out there, or your president or your dean getting back out to meet with them. So I think, sure, the logistics can pose a challenge, but I think from a donor-centric perspective, it's a mixed bag.
Some great advice and also some cautions woven into that advice from Mohammed Abdel-Kader, founder and principal of the Radial Global Advisory, which is a social impact consulting firm that he has founded, as he provides training and consulting here in the United States and around the world. And this is the type of information that we incorporate in our courses in the United States and around the world. We are in person more often with our courses now in more and more US cities, and easily accessible internationally online, as well as in the United States. You can access our online courses, which are asynchronous, meaning recorded, or synchronous, meaning live and virtual. And those courses are available through our website at philanthropy.iupui.edu/the fundraising school, where you also will learn about our custom training, again, in person and online in the United States, around the world. You'll also find our quarterly webinars and these free podcasts, as well as information about our new textbook, Achieving Excellence in Fundraising, the 5th edition, now out. And this textbook gathers all of the research-based evidence and wisdom and advice of our academic faculty at the Indiana University Lilly Family School of Philanthropy, our faculty from the fundraising school, as well as numerous practitioners around the world. Again, that website, philanthropy.iupui.edu/the Fundraising School. So grateful to our guests today, Mohammed Abdel-Kader, our producers today, Mike Anthony and Jennifer Boffman. I'm Bill Stanczykiewicz, and now you are now more fully informed on this first day from the Fundraising School.